What's up, folks? Welcome to 4th and 16 Sports. I'm your host, Ellis Tolbert, coming to you live from Pronk Studios here in Greenville, South Carolina. Happy Tuesday, folks. Got a lot of college football to talk about. If you're a Clemson fan, it's not necessarily a good feeling Monday or a Tuesday, but we'll get through it. If you're a Notre Dame fan, you're having fun, you're elated. But, folks, I'll implore you to do us a favor. Go ahead and like the 4th and 16 page. We're coming to you from 4th and 16 page, Seldom Used Reserve, and The Roar. We're also coming to you live over on YouTube, so if you'll do us a favor, please like and subscribe to the page. Make sure you do that. We need you. We're trying to build this thing up, and also hit that notification bell. Get in the comment section. We're going to try to answer some of you guys' questions tonight. But again, we're going to get quite right to it. We're going to be talking about Clemson Notre Dame recap. We're going to be talking about college football playoff implications. We're going to make some picks for the games that are being played this weekend. There's a lot of cancellations, but we're looking to have some fun. Fax, how you doing tonight, man?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to talk tonight about the Tigers, what all transpired on Saturday and why I think it is a good thing going forward.
Yeah, well, it's hard to see.
We're trying to look at we're trying to look at the positive light of things.
Right, and that's the way it should be. Obviously these guys, it's either going to polish you up or it's going to grind you up. That's something that Dabo says a lot, so we'll get into that too. Again, folks, if you'll do us a favor, get into the comment section. We'll let you know if we see some good ones, and we'll try to answer some of your questions. First and foremost, I want to start this show by saying I want to give all of the hats, take them off, salute Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame showed us something in this game that we hadn't seen from a Notre Dame team in a long time. And of course, they have been looked at as the punching bag of college football when it comes to playing in big-time games against elite teams, and they just haven't been able to get over the hump. You look at 2018 matchup with Clemson, 30-3. You look at the national championship that they were in against Alabama, they got thumped. And that's just kind of the way it is for Notre Dame football. But I think they've actually transitioned over, and now they have a legit football program as far as being able to compete now. That had some implications, of course. As you know, they defeated Clemson in South Bend 40-47 in double overtime, instant classic. Whether you're a Clemson fan or not, this is one of the best football games we've seen. And Notre Dame, again, I just want to start by saying, too, I'll own this. We literally only got one thing right in our last episode when we were talking about this. We were just tragically wrong about everything. The one thing that we did get right is I said that they were going to run a lot of design runs with Ian Book. Outside of that, we were wrong about everything. And sometimes you're going to have that. Sometimes you're going to be wrong, and I'm willing to admit that, and that's okay. But I think that this is a learning lesson not only for the Clemson football team, but for the Clemson fans, that, you don't lose a lot. So it's kind of weird when you come back on a Monday morning or Friday after a game, after a Thursday game, and you're the loser. This doesn't happen often. But, folks, I want to say maybe we saw this happening. This has been a 3-week saga for Clemson football. I think that it started with the Syracuse game. It was shaky. Clemson got through that, won it by 26. Probably the worst game out of these three. Even though you were down by 18 against Boston College, I still feel like the worst game was against Syracuse. I actually think you played a pretty good game overall when you really look at the aspect of it, because it took 2 overtimes for Notre Dame to actually beat Clemson at home, a depleted Clemson team. Now, I don't want to take anything away from Notre Dame. I'm not going to sit up here and talk about, the refs won the game. And I don't want to talk about how many players were out or Trevor Lawrence being on the sideline. For all intents and purposes, DJ Uiagalelei looked like a monster.
Yeah, and this game was super encouraging for Clemson fans going forward because DJ Uiagalelei, this guy's legit. This is the quarterback of the future. This will be your starting quarterback for the Tigers for the next 2 years. And this game on Saturday showed me that we can have utmost confidence in our team going into that Georgia game to kick off next season.
Absolutely.
Because DJ just went to South Bend. He's 18 years old.
Yeah.
True freshman. He's my age.
Yeah.
He went to South Bend, and he put up 400 yards.
Yeah.
400
29
yards.
to 44, 439 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions.
And add a rushing touchdown on top of that. And he didn't turn
too.
the ball over. Like, this kid is just genuinely I would say he's a top 10 QB in the entirety of college football right now.
Right now, it looks like it.
I truly believe so because you can't name 10 other quarterbacks that are going to South Bend and doing that with bad O-line play, number one, limited weapons, and absolutely no run game. There's not 10 other quarterbacks in the country that are doing that, and Clemson has 2 of the 10 on the roster right now. And I would say number 1 and probably number 7 or 8.
Yeah, absolutely. And, almost 800 yards, 4 touchdowns, 0 interceptions in 2 games. I just want to put it to bed that I don't think that not having Trevor Lawrence out there was going to be that big of a deal. And especially in this game, I don't think it changes the outcome particularly. I think most of this game lies on 2 things. One, the defense and the injuries that they were missing. A lot of guys that were not playing for them, most notably Jamie Skalski, Tyler Davis, and Mike Jones Jr. We had other guys go down in the game. Of course, Brian Brzee went down early. Justin Mascal went down. You had Nolan Turner, Landon Zander. Both of your starting safeties go down in this game. And then you didn't have Mario Goodrich available. I think that Sheridan Jones ended up getting hurt in this game. So you were playing with a skeleton crew. And then I think the other thing, and I know this has been harped on, if you're a Clemson fan, if you watched some awesome shows out there like the Morgan Thomas Show, Payskin Pete, all those guys like that, these people have already talked about this a million times ad nauseum, but we're going to bring it up again. The O-line play, particularly pertaining to the run game, is just not where it needs to be.
Oh, it's absolutely horrible.
It's not competitive right now.
It's terrible, and it's just one of the things where when the casual football fan watches a football game, the running back's not producing, and this time it's Travis Etienne, obviously. They're going to blame the running back, right? That's always going to be the number one guy. You're like, why is Travis not getting all of these runs? Well, I can just here to say Travis had a couple bad plays in the Notre Dame game, notably the fumble, which I don't think was entirely his fault. The fact that there are not holes for him to run through is not his fault in the slightest.
No.
This is not an indictment on Travis Etienne or his ball carrier vision, his ability to make people miss. He just has nowhere to run. Quite literally, he has nowhere to run, and I'm baffled at where Clemson can even go from the run game perspective, because this is like 4 weeks in a row where I feel like Clemson's been outplayed in the trenches.
Yeah, and to your point, I think that if there's not enough time for you to be able to make a lot of things happen, of course, there are different blocking schemes for a lot of people. Clemson did a lot of things really well, a lot of split flow zone type stuff. You saw a lot of misdirection, especially with naked boots. It worked out for Clemson. I think it's one of those things where they had the ability to be able to stretch the outsides of Notre Dame. But for some reason, they wanted to keep going up the A-gap. It was just getting exploded. Now, hats off to the Notre Dame interior D-line, and in fact, their entire D-line. Kirk Heinrich, that guy's a monster, right? Ojulari, these guys are all really, really good players. And I feel like because of the experience of Notre Dame's trenches, you want to talk about their O-line, all guys except one were seniors. Actually, the center was a junior. Everybody else was a senior or a graduate player. And you go to the other side of the ball, they're all upperclassmen as well. These guys have played a lot of football. They're very, very talented. And that's where they controlled the game. We want to look on the other side of the ball where Kyron Williams basically took over the game for the most part, both in the running game and pass blocking. They were running for the most part a lot of 5-man protections, but once they realized that Clemson was going to bring a lot of pressure, most notably through the A-gaps, a lot of stunts and twists. Brian Kelly talked about this too. They wanted to figure out how they can mitigate that, and they brought in Kyron Williams, a guy that's a redshirt freshman, and he just ate. We couldn't get to Ian Book.
No, I'm being serious. Like, that's probably the best pass protection game I've ever seen a running back play on any level, because you could notice, like, just watching the game, you could notice his impact on the pass protection. I mean, we were sending linebackers, we were sending defensive backs, and this dude was just chopping them down. Like, I've never seen anything like that in my life. I got to just tip the cap.
Yeah, and again, I want to make sure it's known that I'm not taking anything away from the effort that Clemson put there. Of course, these guys went out there, they fought with the heart of a champion. They did not want to give up, and it took 2 overtimes to get it done. There was a lot of things that Notre Dame took from Clemson. It wasn't one of those things where Clemson was just, they just had a couple bad breaks. Of course they had a couple bad breaks. There were some things that they took from Clemson. Most notably, there was no run game and there was no short dump-offs. It just wasn't available for Clemson in this game. But I'll say this too. I think that there's an opportunity for Clemson to learn. And I think it's one of those things where they're going to need this bye week bad.
And anything, it's just for health purposes. And we really need that Clemson as a team just needs to get healthier. And it's one of those things where you can say the Trevor Lawrence injury, and obviously the Trevor Lawrence injury makes a huge impact on the team. But DJ Uiagalelei, you can't ask for anything more of a game. Me and Ellis talked about this. You can't ask for anything more than the game he played. I mean, 439 and 2. You add a rushing touchdown. He was incredible. The player that this defense needs the most is Jamie Skalski, and it's a noticeable difference in Clemson's defense when Skalski is on the field and Clemson's defense when Skalski's off the field, because you'll see multiple plays per game where Skalski just blows up a run play. I feel like we haven't had that since he's gotten injured.
Yeah.
We haven't gotten any running back in the backfield since Skalski's gotten injured.
No. And, again, I do think that Kyron Williams, Chris Tyree, Jafar Armstrong, Sebo Flemmerster, that might actually be the best running back group that we're going to see all year.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where I feel like Clemson's strong suit is bringing a lot of exotic blitzes, a lot of twists, a lot of stunts, a lot of shading at the last minute. But Notre Dame knew that, and Notre Dame had tendencies that they were aware of Clemson's tendencies. For the most part, Clemson is a team that's going to be predicated on evolution. So there's a lot of things that they try to do to try to make things happen. You've seen plays develop later in the game that happened earlier on. You might see that early in the season. But Notre Dame did their homework, and they did it well, too, because it seemed like, of course, they were able to get a lot of things happening with the big plays, and I talked about this, too. I wasn't particularly worried about Clemson's matchup against the Notre Dame cornerbacks. I thought that was a very winnable matchup with what we have and what they have.
I would say they did win that matchup.
They did win that matchup. They did not win the matchup with safeties. They did not win the matchup with linebackers. The linebackers at Notre Dame had a career game. And it's one of those things where they were helped out again, dude, by the D-line.
We had -1 rushing yards. We had -1 rushing yards in a top 4 matchup football game. That game they went to, we had -1.
Yeah, you can't.
You had negative rushing yards. You can't win a game like that. That's just not realistic.
Travis Etienne had 18 carries, 1.6 yards per carry.
Yeah, it's 28
That's not
yards.
explosive.
Yeah.
And if you think about what Clemson has done in the past few games, actually, when Travis Etienne was neutralized in the run game, they were able to bring in a lot of guys with the short passing game and having Travis Etienne be a weapon. Again, they shaded him a lot. You had a guy like Kyle Hamilton, safety, who's, in my opinion, an All-American. He's not too far away from Richard LeCounte, if not better. They shaded him all night. There was no way that he could be able to get free. Now, Travis Etienne had one heroic catch late in the game. That was amazing. There was nothing that anyone could do. He was going to catch that ball. DJ Uiagalelei put it right where he needed to have it. Big, amazing catch. But for the most part, Travis Etienne was silenced.
I mean, he had 8 receptions for 57 yards in that game. You probably think, okay, but that's the lowest yards per catch of anyone on the team. His longest play of the game was 22 yards on a reception.
Yeah.
And we know who Travis is, right?
Yeah.
We know what Travis can do. That's not Travis. Travis is a player that gets at least 1 big play game, and he just didn't have that big play.
Yeah, and, truthfully, there's a lot of things that I'm questioning in this game. Again, we want to talk about what happened at the depth at running back. Lynjay Dixon played in the game, but he didn't even see the field in actual gameplay. Ches Malusi did before he did.
Ches Malusi only had 1 carry as well for 5 yards.
Well, he would have had 2, but he went the wrong way on the play, and DJ ran into him, had to turn into a quarterback power. But at the same time...
Does that mean Malusi is the running back 2 now?
But that's my question. I don't know what's happening because you want to rely on your upperclassmen and experience in games, but it seems as if he has been passed up. And again, it's not like Lynjay was injured. He was out there on kick return. So
you know that because he fumbled one.
Yeah. Which was also an omen for the night.
Yeah.
But I feel like, again, there was a couple things that I want to go back to. The defense just having their issues, a lot of dead bodies out there, and just not being prepared for the Notre Dame offense. Tommy Rees, coordinator up at Notre Dame, he looked at tendencies. This is, again, I keep talking about it, the tendencies of Clemson. He already knew. He and Brian Kelly came together. They were on the same page. They decided, hey, let's do some things differently. We need to push the ball down the field, something we don't see Ian Book do a lot. I mean, the guy's having 300 yards passing like maybe 4 times in his career. I know that's hyperbole, so if you're a Notre Dame fan, please don't come for me. But at the same time, to me, it's one of those deals where they just outfoxed Clemson on all phases of the game.
I think this is a game where I think Clemson got outcoached as well, if I have to say, which if we're taking back to 2018 college football playoff, Dabo Swinney and the staff, that's literally a coaching masterclass against Notre Dame. And this year, I feel like was the opposite to an extent. I feel like the Tigers rarely get out-coached, but this game against the Irish, definitely, Clemson got out-coached.
Yeah, they did. They did. And it doesn't help that you're playing in South Bend. I know that there was only, 15%, 20% capacity. But that's a very big stadium. That's historic. Notre Dame has beaten some teams up there. They've done it. It took a while. The last team, I think, was Florida State, Charlie Ward.
In the 90s, yeah.
They beat them. It was in the 90s, though. So they had been trying to get over that hump. And then, folks, you got to remember something. Notre Dame had this game circled on their schedule for 2 years.
It's also good to kind of put things into perspective. That was the first regular season game Clemson has lost in 3 years.
Yeah.
It's been almost 3 years since Clemson. The last 2 regular seasons, Clemson went undefeated.
Yeah, and that's why we want to talk a little bit more about that too.
What was Clemson over the last 2 years? It was 29-1 with a national title.
Yeah,
and their only loss coming to LSU.
LSU,
year.
Right.
So
I
need to put
think
things into perspective here.
There's something specific that I want to dive into too. So, with the loss, it's jarring because Clemson doesn't lose a lot. You mentioned how they didn't lose. The last loss was 2017 at Syracuse. So it's kind of jarring to see Clemson lose a game. And, where we talked about last episode where they're going to play in big games, sometimes you're going to lose those games. And you lose sight of that when you win so much. Sometimes you feel like you can't be beaten. And I think that leads to a little bit of a mindset. I know we're talking about fans here because fans, are the ones that you hear. You don't hear the players, you hear the fans, right? And while the players don't get anything from my opinion has nothing to do with how the game is going to end up. But the players, you have to remember these are young men too. You're 18 years old. You know how this is. If you're playing in something, you're competitive, somebody's telling you how great you are. You don't know what losing's like because you've never done it. When it happens to you, you have to have the mindset to get back.
Yeah, it's a mindset thing. It's really just kind of jarring. I mean, it's kind of weird to me because if I'm not mistaken, DJ Uiagalelei, they went undefeated last year in high school, right?
Yep.
And they won their state championship out in California. And this is like his first loss as an athlete in probably 2 or 3 years.
Yeah. And it was the same for Trevor when he lost.
Yeah, it was the same with Trevor when he lost to LSU.
He didn't lose
at Cartersville
ever. I mean, he did. I think one in high school.
They lost one game.
It's hard to get your head around it. But the thing that I want to say for mostly for Clemson fans out there, if you're listening, and don't take this the wrong way, but it might rub you the wrong way. But is this loss? Of course, again, this is fans. Is this loss bad to you because you lost and you don't lose a lot, so you don't know how to deal with it? Or is it bad because you thought that you were going to just go in there and destroy Notre Dame? You just thought that because it was Notre Dame and you're Clemson, you're going to put up 50, 60 points and they're only going to score 3. This is something we talk about a lot. When we do predictions on this show, and for as long as I've been doing this, every time I put a score prediction up, I go, hey, guys, what do you think Clemson's going to score? What do you think the score of the game is going to be? And the first thing I get is everybody going, Clemson 77, Alabama 0. And you're like, let's be a little realistic here. Other teams have D1 players too. But it gets to the point where you're trying to figure out I don't know. Again, I'm at a loss for words. The only thing I can do is give credit to Notre Dame. Now, I'll say this. This is something that I've been seeing a lot too, and I might be one of the only people taking this take. Obviously, Clemson still controls their own destiny. They have a bye week this week, which is going to be important. They need to get a lot of guys healthy, but they also need to get a lot of game plan, change your tendencies. This is on the coaches too. Dabo, Tony Elliott, Brent Venables. Switch it up. Do something different. But while I believe that Clemson controls their own destiny, you have 3 games left. You're going to travel down to Tallahassee next weekend. You're going to play Pittsburgh at home in a rematch of the 2016 game, which, ugh. And then you're also going to play Virginia Tech and Blacksburg, a team that just lost to Liberty but is sneaky good in certain ways. Their offense is actually pretty good.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about this later in the show. They're actually favored over Miami this weekend.
Which is a big deal.
Yeah.
I also think that Notre Dame controls their own destiny. Now, they have a much more difficult road ahead than Clemson does. Not only do they have a difficult road ahead because they're now going to be traveling to Chestnut Hill to play Boston College and Phil Dracovic, who did not look good this weekend, by the way. Syracuse, they only scored 7 points against Syracuse, which is weird. But
it really goes to show what Clemson's defense is.
But it's what
like.
I'm saying. That happens every single time. We'll have a team. It's usually NC State. NC State will come up, play Clemson tight,
that insurmountable
get beat
high,
next week.
and then they just
But for Notre Dame, they have to travel to BC. They have to travel to North Carolina. They have a couple other games in between. Just because you think that you're going to get a rematch with Notre Dame, I want to caution people to not have the mind. And you can do whatever you want. But I'm just trying to keep you from having that blow of what it feels like now to lose to Notre Dame. Just because you might get a rematch with them, do not go into this going, oh, we're gonna beat them by 50. Like I said earlier, Clemson 77, Notre Dame 0. Now, while I am on the train, I've always seen this too, this is just football knowledge. It's hard to beat a team twice in one season. You have all the film from every other season from Ian Book, Brian Kelly, Tommy Rees, what they like to do. Same for Clark Lee, defensive coordinator. You have experience with them in this specific season. You know what they did against you and what worked, what didn't work. It's going to be hard to beat Clemson again, especially if Clemson has everybody full strength.
Yeah, I think that in a potential rematch with Clemson and Notre Dame, I think Clemson would come out the victor. But as you said, I don't think it's going to come in there and be a blowout. Notre Dame, you got to think, if Notre Dame runs the table, and that would include a win over Boston College this weekend, they have to play North Carolina. They've got a pretty decently hard schedule.
Yeah.
And also, if you're a Clemson fan, you're in the nightmare scenario. We have to do the SEC thing now that we have a loss.
Yep.
We have to root for Notre Dame.
Yep.
Because we cannot have Notre Dame lose.
Well, and not only this, but Notre Dame is also rooting for Alabama to win out. Because if Alabama loses, let's say they go through the wire, Alabama loses to Florida in the SEC championship game, well, both Alabama and Florida is getting in. There's even some chatter right now about Texas A&M, which I know you hate, but I'm going to definitely talk about it because I told you so.
That's some nightmare fuel.
But right now, Clemson's in a good position so long as they have the right mindset and Notre Dame doesn't lose.
And listen, I don't want to downplay the loss because obviously it matters, but if Notre Dame wins all their games and Clemson wins all their games and Clemson wins the playoff or the ACC title game, Clemson gets into the playoff.
Firmly in the playoff.
And then everyone's 0-0 in the playoff.
Yep.
It doesn't matter. And, you can look back on this year's end. Clemson went undefeated in, they lost to Pitt in 2016.
Yep.
And they won the national title.
That's right.
I'm not trying to draw an equivalency, but that game was 48-45?
Yeah, it was a weird game.
Clemson lost a shootout in 2016, and they had some injuries in that game. There was some officiating. But we're going here. And I just think that if Clemson is healthy, and they have not even Trevor, he's going to be back. The linebacking core. You need Skalski and you need
to have
Mike
your
Jones.
secondary good too, your D-line.
If you have everyone generally healthy and you can just put 9+ starters out on both sides of the ball, I think you beat Notre Dame.
But also think about this too, because this year is so wacky. We know what it's like with COVID. At any moment, someone can be taken away. I don't think we knew that Trevor Lawrence was going to be taken away. Now, fortunately for us, we were okay with DJ.
That's something that actually sucks because I feel like I know that Travis didn't have a great game this weekend, and I know that he didn't look like a world beater like he usually is. If Travis went down, that would be really bad.
So that is kind of another thing that I want to talk about because I think all we heard, the rhetoric throughout the entire game was that Trevor Lawrence not playing was a detriment to Clemson's offense. And I, for one, am going to go out there and put it out there now. No disrespect to Trevor Lawrence.
I don't think it was.
Where I think Trevor Lawrence does help out in more downfield vision, more situational football
General experience, yeah.
Because he's a junior, he has he's got that experience for situational football. I think Clemson still loses this game because it's not necessarily on the offense. Now, maybe Tony Elliott is not as conservative later on in the game, especially 2 minutes left in the game.
Yeah, man. That really got my blood boiling. That was the only thing that I can really say I was upset from with this game is, number one, you have 0 success on the ground the entire game with Travis Etienne. You get to midfield, your defense gets you a huge stop. I would say even kind of a lucky stop. Had a drop. So you get to midfield, you got 1st and 10 around the 45, right?
Yep.
Who's been the best player on the field the whole game?
Yeah.
It's been DJ Uiagalelei.
Yeah.
Why are you taking the ball out of his hands to do something that you have not done successfully? And I don't care about, they have 3 timeouts anyways.
Yep.
If you run the ball, they're getting the ball back with 2 minutes anyways.
Well, a lot of that situation, though, did come from DJ being injured. Now, Dabo announced this today, actually, that DJ was actually injured in this game, still injured. He had that shoulder injury from when they decided to play him like a fullback against Miami. So they wanted to kind of ease him in a lot of situations. Again, Trevor Lawrence plays in this situation. He's a little bit quicker on his feet, probably a little bit better runner than DJ. I think you might be able to get a couple more first downs. But, again, I don't think this was on the Clemson offense so much as I know we talk about run blocking, and it doesn't help that you couldn't run the ball.
You want to give a helmet tap to the second straight week of Cornell Powell just balling out? This dude had 150 through the air and another touchdown, and he should have had a second touchdown.
He should have.
It got called off. But seriously, when Clemson gets their, I just wish we had Justin. I can't. I hate to say it. I wish we had Justin Ross.
We'll just touch on that quickly, though. Because Clemson doesn't have a bona fide number one receiver right now, I think the going into the season, the idea was going to be Justin Ross. When Justin Ross was ruled out for the congenital neck issue, then it went to Joseph Ngata. Joseph Ngata was hurt. He's still hurt. He's been hurt all year. He played a little bit in this game, got hurt more.
Let's just clear everything up. Everyone on the team is hurt.
Everyone hurt.
It seems like it just seemed like when I was watching the game, it seemed like Clemson. It was a Clemson player down every play. It was like we look up, Bracee's injured. You look up, Xanders is going to the locker room. Nolan Turner's down, and Brockhurst went down at one point. It was just piling up, and I'm like, dude, we need this bye so bad.
Yep, and we knew that's one last thing I will say too that. I have a couple more thoughts. One, tip my hat to Ian Book. We've given him a lot of grief on this show because in the past years, Ian Book was not going to be the guy that wins you this game.
Yeah.
He showed me something this game. He had a lot of poise. He was great on his feet. It was hard to get the guy down. He could run. He was getting first downs. He was finding what players were open. Of course, I've talked about this ad nauseum. I do not think that Notre Dame has all of these crazy threats. And I don't care if you're a Notre Dame fan listening to this and you beat Clemson. Sure, you did. But your receiver core, I know pot calling kettle black, you don't have any specifically number one receivers. No guy that you know is going to win that matchup one-on-one. McKinley played above his ability.
He did.
Avery Davis played above his ability. You had Ben Skoranek playing great. And then you didn't have Braden Lindsey. That was another crazy thing because this guy is that burner down the field, the Frank Ladson type. Glad he wasn't playing. Michael Mayer, despite having a lot of issues earlier in the game, decided to turn around, hey, I want to start playing football now. Tommy Tremble, and then Kyron Williams, again, the guy that I believe is the X factor for Notre Dame. The reason why Notre Dame is this good now, coupled with that O-line, I tip my cap to Notre Dame. But at the same time, again, I don't want people thinking that if you go into this game in the ACC championship game, that because you get everyone healthy, that you're just going to blow out Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame is a little bit better than we thought they were. I still don't know that they're elite. I don't know that they do anything elite. Whereas I think their D-line is pretty great. I think their linebacker core is really good. I still think their cornerbacks are a little sus. I like their safeties, especially Kyle Hamilton. But you can win those matchups on the outside. Clemson did that.
This is kind of an unrelated topic, but I just realized this will probably be the first time Clemson is wearing white in an ACC championship game in a while. Because they won't be the 1 seed.
Good point.
Clemson will not have the better record, so they'll be wearing white in that ACC championship game.
Good point. Whatever works, I'm cool with it. Go Stormtrooper all you want for me. I don't care as long as you win the game.
Purple pants?
It will have to be purple pants.
Yeah.
No, it's orange pants. So we have to go orange pants.
Orange pants for the title game.
For the title game. So that would be the title game.
So it'll be white on orange.
It'll be white on orange. So we're going to go all purple against Pitt. That's going to be Military Appreciation Day. So again, tip my hat to Notre Dame. But I think Clemson right now, this is a soul-searching thing, and I trust Dabo Swinney to get this thing back on track. But
just win out and hope Notre Dame wins out.
That's all you got to do.
Even if Notre Dame doesn't win out, if you win that ACC title game, you're in.
Yep.
One loss ACC champ is going to get you in 99% of the time.
Folks, if you'll do us a favor, please hit that like button, subscribe to us, hit the notification bell if you like what you're listening to. Go tell a friend. Homework. We got some homework for you. Go tell some people about 4th and 16. We want more conversation. We want to get you guys out there because this is what we do. I mean, we're talking college football. Why not? On a Tuesday night. Turn it up on Tuesday. But and over on Facebook, please like and share the page. Let everybody know about it. Create a watch party. Let's have some fun. That's the only thing we can do. But let's go ahead and talk about some college football playoffs implications.
Yeah.
So obviously this game is important because Clemson loses. Clemson was the number 1 seed. You drop to 4 in both coaches and AP.
Yeah.
If we had it up to some other people, I'm sure they would be lower than that. But
people are stupid.
People are stupid. We know how this works. But right now you have Alabama at number 1.
Deservingly
Notre
so.
Dame goes to number 2. Ohio State, I'm assuming Ohio State goes to number 3 solely because they've only played 2 games. I think if they played more games, they would be still at number 2 spot. And at number 4, you have Clemson rounding that out. But we have some players behind them. Of course, Georgia loses in that 5 spot. I believe Texas A&M is in the 5th spot now. You're going to have, I think Florida's right behind them at 6, and you have BYU at 7. Now, let's talk about this in Cincinnati at 8. Let's talk about this because this is how this is going to shape up. Of course, Clemson losing Notre Dame head-to-head in the first game is always going to have Notre Dame ahead of them. But the best-case scenario is you go 500 against Notre Dame. You go and beat them in the ACC Championship, handle your business. Clemson could get into the playoffs. I don't think there's any issue with that. Clemson loses from now through the ACC Championship game. Well, if you lose now, if you lose any other game in this regular season, you're done.
Yeah.
I don't think we see that considering Clemson's going to be playing Florida State, Pitt, and Virginia Tech. I think those are 3 winnable games.
I think that Clemson should – I don't want to say cruise because these last 3 weeks have been shaky.
That's what I was talking about earlier.
Clemson should not be cruising, but if they lose to Florida State, I hope we don't make the playoffs. That would be so undeserved. Like, they are just they're the gutter of the ACC.
Yeah, and they have a lot of mental issues to go through right now. Florida State's trying to retool. They're already talking about firing Coach Norvell. So Clemson should be fine. So you control your destiny at number 4. You win out, you're good, right? Notre Dame, number 2 spot. They have a considerably tougher schedule going forward. They have 2 games that I believe that could be a potential trap game. That's Boston College and North Carolina. Boston College, not so much because Boston College is on Notre Dame's level, but because you're still riding that high of the Clemson game. And one little sneaky fact that I want to talk about is the fact that their fans rushed the field after the win. Now, Notre Dame did get their test results, I believe, about an hour or 2 ago. Now, whether Brian Kelly's going to let everybody know tonight, which is Tuesday, November 10th, or sometime before Saturday, they could have some players missing. You have some players missing going up against a hungry Boston College team. I don't know. We'll see. And then also the advent of going to North Carolina, a team that's built offensively kind of like Clemson. They can score a lot of points when everything's going right. I think North Carolina can definitely run the ball. I think their offensive line might actually be better than Clemson's. But 2 games that are tough for Notre Dame. But if I'm being objective, I think Notre Dame wins out. So I think you have an undefeated Notre Dame versus a 1-loss Clemson. They're 1 loss to Notre Dame. That can cancel each other out. I think Alabama's going to run the table. I think they're not going to get beaten by anyone. Of course, the game this weekend against LSU was canceled because they didn't want to see that bloodbath. And, I don't think anything. I think they stay at number 1. They go from now to the end at number 1 spot.
It's more than deserved for them to say the number. I mean, they're the best team in the country right now.
That's right.
There's no disputing it.
For Ohio State, they're kind of the enigma. So I don't think they're their toughest test.
It's because they started late.
Well,
they're weird.
Well, and they're toughest, but they're going to have enough games to be able to qualify them. So
Indiana.
The Pac-12 is going to be out. They're only playing like 6 or 7 games. It's not enough time for them to play. Big 12 is pretty much eliminated. I think Oklahoma State losing really hurt the conferences in general. But maybe they have a backdoor chance of getting in. I don't know. But for honestly speaking, Alabama's not losing anybody.
Let me pitch you a scenario. So let's say Oregon, USC, one of these random Pac-12 teams goes undefeated, and
they won't have it. Oregon won't play a ranked team until the Pac-12 championship.
So you don't think that they have any chance, even if let's say the most viable candidate is a 2-loss Clemson. Let's say Clemson loses to Notre Dame again, but you have an undefeated Oregon sitting there that's a Pac-12 champ.
So I don't think that's going to work out because I still think there's some enigma teams behind that. So again, let's talk about.
So you think Cincy, BYU, these type of teams have a stronger case than a Pac-12
Absolutely.
team?
There's going to be 3 teams that have a better chance. So if Florida wins out.
That's true.
You have this scenario. If Florida beats Alabama in the SEC championship game, Alabama's going to drop. You have a potential of Ohio State being number 1. We'll talk about that shuffling a little bit. But then you also have the advent of Alabama also getting in because they went to the wire undefeated into the SEC championship. We're already looking at them as either the number 1, 2, or 3 best team in the country. It's just one of those deals where they're going to get in. They're going to get in. Then you're talking about a Clemson. If they beat Notre Dame, is going to get in. And then you're talking about a Notre Dame who, if they play another tight game against Clemson in a loss, you're 500, they're in. But that's contingent on Florida beating Alabama. Now, let's say status quo, Alabama beats Florida in the SEC championship game. Let's say that Ohio State doesn't get beat by anyone. I still don't think they jump Alabama.
It's Bama and Ohio State.
Bama and Ohio State, number 1 and 2. Okay. Number 3, I think in that scenario, if Clemson beats Notre Dame,
I think it'll be Clemson.
They'll be Clemson at number 3,
and Notre Dame at
and
number 4.
Well, Notre Dame could be at number 4 because they have a better resume than some of their other schools. Now,
so do you think? Okay, so this is the real question. Do you think Cincy or BYU gets the pivot over Notre Dame?
I would rather. And
I would rather see them.
Texas A&M is going to get a chance,
dude.
Over yes. Dude. Listen, let me tell you, and I know you've wanted to deny this all year, but this is serious brass tacks. Texas A&M runs the table. From what I've seen so far of Texas A&M, nobody left on their schedule is going to beat them. Nobody. All right. So they're playing better offense and defense now. They're clicking. They have that one win over Florida. Right now, that looks like a great win because Florida just throttled Georgia. And I know Georgia had some guys out defensively, most notably Richard LeCounte. But they put up 41 points against that Georgia defense. Now, Florida, let's say Florida gets to the situation where they go and they play a great game against Alabama, but they get beat. Texas A&M did not lose to anyone else. Texas A&M could sneak in at the 4 spot because they have a better win than a lot of other schools. Now, I know a lot of people are going to say, well, how do they have a better win than Notre Dame?
They will not get to the championship game, though.
They will not, but it doesn't matter because we've seen this before.
So are we talking this is a Georgia scenario where they still get in?
This is an Alabama situation.
Or this is an Alabama scenario.
Where Alabama gets in.
They got in over Ohio State that year.
That's right. So Texas A&M does have a backdoor chance to get in. That's contingent on them running the table, Florida going again in the SEC championship, assuming they don't get beat by anyone else in the SEC West. I don't think that's happening.
So let me pitch you another scenario. 1 loss Texas A&M or 2 loss Clemson with 2 losses to Notre Dame.
In that situation, I think that Texas A&M gets over Clemson.
Wow.
And the reason why is because, again, they have that one win over Florida, a team that played in the SEC championship.
And their only loss would be to number 1.
Twice. So I don't know that Texas A&M. And now it's a strange thing to talk about Texas A&M because Texas A&M got throttled by Alabama. It was bad. But
they also almost lost to Vanderbilt.
They did, but we ended up almost losing to BC. It goes back and forth. The problem is when you start muddling, then you really start to have to get granular with it because then you're thinking about teams like Cincinnati and BYU. I honestly think that BYU has more leg to stand on because I feel like their offense is better than Cincinnati.
Why is that? Cincinnati has multiple ranked wins already.
They do. They do. They've already beaten Memphis.
The committee is going to value strength of schedule more than they're going to value the eye test. Maybe it might be better for the ratings because Zach Wilson, they've got the eye candy. They throw
but
the ball.
Desmond Ritter's playing good football
exactly.
too.
Since he has a better chance than BYU, in my opinion.
I'll concede that. I say either or because I think right now them showing you that BYU being ahead of Cincinnati is where they think.
That's stupid to me. That's really stupid to me.
But that's just kind of where they have it right now.
We saw what Cincy did to SMU 2 weeks ago, and they just went and they killed Houston too.
That's true. But I will say this. But BYU has destroyed everybody. So,
dude, they beat UTEP by 2 points in OT. I refuse to. Listen, I love Zach, okay? We talked about Zach before the year. Zach is a great player. That team is not playoff level. Cincy has more talent around their quarterback than BYU does, and it's not even close.
We got Bobby Mahiran I think I said it right, in the comment section. He goes, what about Coastal? Coastal has a chance, but right now they don't value the Coastal wins. This is why they're still so far back in the rankings.
If I'm not mistaken, Coastal does play Liberty at some point.
They do. They play Liberty at the end of the year, I think.
Coastal needs to beat Liberty and then win their conference, and I think that we might see them get a Big 6 bid, but playoffs.
Yeah, I don't know if they're in the playoffs. I think the highest they could probably get is like 8.
Yeah.
And that's just being objectively speaking.
And they're fun. Don't get me wrong. They're really fun, and they're a great team to watch. They're entertaining and stuff, but the committees just would never go for that. If we had an 18 playoff, sure.
Yeah, well, we've been asking for it, and we'll see. But I think that right now the teams that are in play for it, I think 1, 2 are solid.
Bama and Ohio State.
Well, 1, 3 are solid. I think Alabama's going to run the table. I think Ohio State's going to run the table. I would have felt a little bit different if Penn State didn't start 0-3, but getting throttled by Maryland, they got toyed with Maryland. I'm going to have to go cold on anybody beating Ohio State. Maybe Indiana, but I feel like Indiana's playing above their actual ability right now. But we talked about Indiana.
I feel like Indiana's got a really gimmicky offense.
They do.
Won't hold up
and their coordinators are actually younger than me, which is weird. Both their offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator are younger than me. So it just feels weird. But those guys with Michael Penix have been playing better. Freifogel looks like a top 10 receiver in college football.
Oh, I love Indiana. It's just they can't.
But
hang.
I don't know. They can't hang with Ohio State.
They don't have the talent to hang.
Now they have given Ohio State some trouble in the past, but I think now I don't know that.
In theory, we could get that Purdue game. Ohio State just comes out and lays an egg.
Maybe.
But that doesn't see. I think this team is a lot better than
I do too. I think Ohio State. Now Ohio State, the score of the game this past weekend with Rutgers looks a little weird because they started taking their starters out, and the backup guys did concede a little bit of points and yardage to Rutgers.
It's a Clemson game, pretty much.
It's
Clemson,
they keep the starters in, Ryan Day would have been apologizing for scoring 300 again. So, again, I think the top two teams right now in the country are Alabama and Ohio State. I think Clemson's there, but right now with their injuries and the way things are trending, I do not think that they are right this moment on those two teams' level. Now, if they get healthy again, I'm changing my opinion again. We talked about this.
Listen, if Clemson gets healthy and they beat Notre Dame and get in that playoff, they're going to be my championship.
Well, yeah, I think so too. I still think that they could get winning the championship. I don't know. I'll say, just being unbiased, I think that they could win or lose the national championship. But that is something we want to talk about, and we'll pivot into that right now. So if, let's say, things hold serve. And I know a lot of people have been talking about, but what if Clemson ends up playing Notre Dame in the ACC championship and then they both get in the playoff and play again? How would that happen? First and foremost.
Well, okay, theoretically, it would take an Ohio State or an Alabama loss.
But we don't see that.
Well, okay, let's just throw this out there. What if Alabama loses to Florida, right? We're talking about it. So if Alabama loses to Florida,
Ohio State goes one.
Then Notre Dame wouldn't even get in.
Okay, but that's my point.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter. So
there's no way. There's no way to get a 2-3. Or the only way would be for number one would be Notre Dame to get the 1 seed, which isn't going to happen.
Which means they have to beat Clemson. Which means Clemson's not getting in.
Yeah, so there's
no way they're going to play back to back.
There's no path for that to happen. The only way I could even theoretically see it would be Ohio State drops a game. Yeah. That's the only way. It's if Ohio State drops a game and then they win the conference, but I still think they would put them over Notre Dame at the 3, and then Notre Dame would play Alabama.
And so that's why I feel like when you're doing that, you're doing too much. We're just trying to come up with crazy scenarios.
That's not going to happen. There's really good chance Notre Dame and Clemson both get in.
Yeah.
Little to no chance they play.
Because I think if Clemson beats Notre Dame and they jump Notre Dame, just because Clemson would have that last loss.
Yeah, if Clemson beats Notre Dame, then they're at the minimum 3 seed.
They're at the minimum 3 seed. I think Notre Dame will get in at 4.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. If I'm a Clemson fan, when we were at number 1, you felt great about it because, hey, you're going to play that number 4 team. It could be BYU. It could be Texas A&M. It could be any of these other schools. You felt confident about that. I still feel like
Clemson's going to get Ohio State or Bama now.
That's right. And I feel like on a neutral field, Clemson healthy, you're going to beat Notre Dame. You're going to beat Texas A&M. You would beat Florida. But right now, that Clemson team that we saw Saturday with all those injuries, Texas A&M could beat them. I think that Florida would have beaten them that night. Yeah. But, again, those are hypotheticals because it didn't happen. But Clemson getting in at 3, you're likely going to play Ohio State or Alabama. And I do not like that matchup as we're talking this moment.
Yeah, and it's concerning. I know the Clemson fan base is probably feeling stupidly confident because 4-0 against Ohio State.
But see, that's the same thing that we had with Notre Dame. We thought Notre Dame was going to beat them out.
We're seeing this year, Clemson is not invincible, people.
No.
It is a definite possibility that these teams are better than Clemson, and they've shown that so far.
Look, we talked about how Notre Dame had this game circled for Clemson for 2 years.
You think Ohio
State's going to be any less angry?
They've got it circled. They've got it starred. They've got it red
It's in the locker room. Ryan Day is telling people about it.
They've got it hung up in the locker room.
Yeah, they want Clemson. And then if you think about it, you also don't get any vouchers from Alabama. The last time you played Alabama, it was a 28-point win. Yeah. So they are going to come back at you too.
This is what you get as a result of being good.
The best
you beat everyone else good, and now they're all mad at you.
I'm not scared to play any team. I feel confident that Clemson can go in and hold their own if they're healthy against any of the teams in the country. Clemson is elite. But right now, I think that if we're going into this saying, oh, yeah, we'll definitely beat them, you're short-sighted, and that's just fandom. But, again, you're a fan. You can think whatever you want to think. I'm just trying to keep you from being utterly disappointed if you lose. I think a lot of people are okay with losing to Notre Dame just because it was like, hey, we'll get a chance to play them again, yada, yada, yada. In the playoffs, you don't get a chance to play again. You're done, right?
It's annoying.
So I think a lot of people had, and of course we did on this show too, we talked about Clemson being a national champion in 2020, 2021. And I'm not saying that this is a bridge year. I think I saw some kind of article saying that instead of a national championship year this year, this is more like a bridge year. I'm not quite ready to say that.
I don't think that's the case.
But I will say with the deficiencies right now, looking at Ohio State, Ohio State has some deficiencies too because they're not very vertical. They do a lot of things horizontally and they rely on Justin Fields a little too much right now. I still think they are tough to beat. I think Alabama right now, because they are so vertical with Devontae, and even without Jalen Waddle, Mac Jones is killing it. You have Najee Harris, all those running backs. It's kind of hard. Now, I feel like their defense still isn't quite where it needs to be, like championship level yet.
Alabama reminds me of LSU
But calling
last
Killer
year.
Black, Clemson's isn't either.
Like, seriously, Alabama reminds me a lot of LSU last year.
Well,
That's concerning.
Now, yeah, they do. They do.
Because their defense it's bad right now, but it's trending upwards. Their offense, you lose a couple guys and you're still killing it.
Well, I was going to say, I think the ceiling for the floor for Alabama scoring for the rest of this year is about 40 points.
Yeah.
They're going to put 40, 50 on everybody they play, and that's including Clemson fans. If we go out there and play Alabama, you're going to have to outscore them.
You cannot.
Ohio State fans, too, you're going to have to outscore Alabama.
You can't stop Mac Jones in that offense right now. You just can't.
I think Ohio State's defense is probably the most solid next to Notre Dame. This is why I think Notre Dame has a shot, because their defense is so solid that they can win the games. And if Ian Book can play well, I think they have a shot at winning a playoff game, but not if they're getting that matchup with Alabama.
I think the nightmare scenario for Notre Dame is the Alabama matchup because they're so vertical and those corners are slow. We saw Cornell Powell and Amari Rodgers beating those guys on. Those corners are objectively slow, and I think, man, with Waddle, it would have gotten really ugly even without Waddle. I think Alabama is able to stretch that defense.
And look, no disrespect to Bracey and McLeod, but those guys just aren't. They are not on the level of their linebackers, their D-line, or their safeties. Those guys are literally very good. Drew comes in. I'm looking at Drew's in the back. He's our control guy. He says Shaun Wade is a liability at corner. I don't know about that. He was the game changer for Ohio State when he went out of the game after that targeting call against Trevor, which is idiotic.
Bad call.
That was a terrible call. I'm a Clemson fan. I'll go ahead and say that was a bad call.
Fumble call was bad too.
Yeah, well, now we're seeing the result of it because it's like, all right, well, that was not a fumble for Justin Ross, but it was a fumble for Amari Rodgers. The same move. He made a football move, took a couple steps. It is what it is. Whatever.
Sometimes you get the break.
Sometimes you get the break. Sometimes you don't. This is why I'm going to be probably the only person on sports radio or talk, whatever, that is not going to talk about refs whatsoever. I don't care. Clemson had a shot to win the game with 2 minutes left, and you just bungle it up. I don't want to hear anything about
Clemson was
the
leading.
refs.
If you're talking about the refs, Clemson was leading the game with 2 minutes left with the ball on first down. There's zero excuse to lose that game.
Yeah.
If you're the best team in the country, you don't lose that game.
So I don't want to hear anything about that. But again, let's go back to these matchups. I think right now, if all things hold serve, I do think the ACC gets 2 teams in, which says a lot about the ACC. Notre Dame needs to join.
It says a lot about the worst conference.
Yeah,
hey, you know what that means? It just means more in the ACC. It just means more.
But I will not. I do want to make sure that we understand that there is a playoff path for a couple of teams. And I think Texas A&M, I think Florida has a shot. I think BYU and Cincy actually legitimately have a shot. Whether they can compete or not, I don't know. But I think if any year, this would be a good year for them to have a shot to get in. But I think, honestly, at this moment, November 10th, 2020, we could be wrong as bad as we were last week. I think it holds serve. I think Clemson wins the rematch. I think Alabama runs the table. I think Ohio State runs the table. Your number 1 team will be Alabama. They'll play Notre Dame. They'll get the choice of where they play. Clemson's going to play Ohio State. That's going to suck, but you got to do what you got to do. And then, that's going to be your top 4. I think 5 rounded out would be – I'm going to go ahead and say I think 5 stays with Texas A&M. I don't see a path if they run the table especially with that Florida win.
So
I don't
you
see a path for
you
BYU or
You don't
Cincinnati
think
to jump them.
Cincy or BYU would jump
No,
Texas A&M?
I don't think so. And we're talking about vying for New Year's Six bowls. Well, everybody's going to get to go to a bowl. Florida State will get to go to a bowl this year, so it doesn't really matter.
I hope they win a bowl game.
the Doodoo Bowl.
We need all the ACC bowl game wins for the agenda. We can call the ACC the powerhouse of the country.
Oh my God!
Go 9-3.
We are the
on,
mitochondria.
Go on 9-3 on bowl weekend. You got two play. Can you imagine if Notre Dame and Clemson matched up in the national title game again?
Oh my God, that'd be very dumb.
Yeah,
that would be very dumb.
It's just a mighty
but
ACC,
yeah,
man.
you know, again, I think right now the playoff. I think there's only 7 teams that could actually make the playoffs right now. That's it. I don't think there's. We've had years before where there was a lot of debates, even out through the 10s. You know, USC, Penn State. You had UCF, you had Auburn, Georgia.
It's Bama, it's Ohio State, it's Clemson, it's Notre Dame, it's BYU, Cincy, and Florida. Those are the only teams that can make it.
Well, Texas A&M, just because again, Texas A&M has that win over Florida. While I think there's a lot of things that need to happen for Texas A&M to actually get there. Again, Florida needs to beat Alabama, needs to lose to Alabama. I also think that Clemson needs to lose. I also think that they have to. Their defense has been playing lights out. Their offense, Kellen Mond. Why is it that the quarterbacks that we've been talking about look so good this past weekend? Kellen Mond looked like a Heisman contender. So did Ian Book. What happened?
Listen, you could put me out there against that South Carolina defense. I'm getting my numbers.
I don't know about that, man. I will say this: South Carolina did. I feel like they gave up. They gave up.
Terrible.
They threw in the towel.
They
They're
kicked
like
a field goal
LSU,
down like 8 scores again.
Yeah, they're done. But I do think that South Carolina should run with Ryan Helinski going forward. I think Colin Hill, you tip your hat to him. Thank you for everything he's done. But Ryan Helinski is going to help you.
That Mike Bobo
in the
offense
future.
is hitting different right now.
Oh my gosh!
Back-to-back stinkers for the Gamecocks.
Folks, let's go ahead and talk about some games this weekend. Of course, a lot of games are being canceled and postponed, so we're not going to see a lot of them. Most notably, you're not going to see Alabama put up 900 points against LSU in a rematch of last year's game. You're not going to see Tennessee get beat by 800 points by Texas A&M this weekend. But you're going to see some other games. Well, who else was that? Mississippi State and Auburn got canceled.
Mississippi State and Auburn did
which
get
nobody
recently
cared.
canceled.
There was going to be zero people watching that game.
I would have watched that
Why?
game. Is that like Michael Leach?
Get out of here. Mike Leach, man, he has been no.
They have terrible players. They have terrible players.
Yeah, pretty bad. Let's go ahead and start with the first game on the docket. And the game we talked about earlier, we previewed a little bit. Miami's going to be traveling to Blacksburg, take on Virginia Tech. Miami's still 6-1, hoping that Notre Dame loses.
Yes. I'm excited for this game.
So they can get a rematch at Clemson.
Yeah.
But right now, the line on this game is Virginia Tech 2.5 favorites.
Yeah, and the over-under is 67.
What do you got on this one?
Give me the U.
Okay, so like we talked about this. To be honest, straight up, they should have lost to NC State. And if Devin Leary plays that game, I think you might have a different turnout. But guess what? Ifs, ands, and buts don't matter. They won the game. I think going into Virginia, they're going to have to score a lot of points to beat Virginia Tech. But I think they can do it.
I'll take Miami.
I'm taking Miami in this one.
I think the over 67.
I think the over, and I also take the cover.
Yeah.
Right now, I think Virginia Tech's still reeling a little bit, trying to figure out what's happening to the ACC Killers and the Liberty Flames. Them boys killing it with Hugh Freeze. But I still think that Miami's got too much for them. Their defense is better. I think they can get more stops than Virginia Tech. So I'm going to Miami with the cover and the over. We got another game that was in any other year would be the Doodoo Bowl. You got Indiana traveling to East Lansing to take on Michigan State. Indiana is number 10, the highest ranking they've had in a really long time.
Only favored by 7.5.
Only favored by 7.5 up in East Lansing, and the over-under is 52. I like Michael Penix.
I think they're going to win and cover.
I like Tom Allen. I think they're going to win. Do I take that cover? Maybe. Rocky Lombardi is a up-and-down quarterback. It's so strange because he looked so good against Michigan and so bad last weekend. So I don't know what we're – I don't know how to handle it.
They had 7 turnovers against Rutgers.
I don't get it, but I'm going with Indiana. I think Indiana's playing really good football right now. Do I think that's going to translate to them having a chance to actually beat Ohio State? Probably not. But I think Michigan State's too Jekyll and Hyde right now. They're too volatile. I'm going with Indiana with the cover.
I'll take Indiana as well with the cover.
I don't know about the over-under, though.
I'm going to say under.
I'm definitely taking the under because I don't think either team's going to score a whole lot of points in this game. Georgia and Missouri. This is a game that's got some intrigue into it. Georgia's number 12 team in the country. Of course, they took that throttling by Florida Gators. Of course, Georgia is now 4-2 in the season. They're going to be going to Columbia, Missouri to take on the Missouri Tigers, Eli Drinkwitz. Georgia is favored by 13.5, pretty much 2 scores, and the over-under is 48. It's interesting how the over-under is lower than Michigan State in Indiana, which is hilarious.
I think that Missouri, I think Georgia's going to win. I think Missouri covers that almost 14-point spread, and I think the game goes over.
Yeah. Right now, Connor Bazelak, I would trust him more than Dwan Mathis or Stetson Bennett. JT Daniels ain't playing at all this year, so go ahead and get out of your head, Georgia fans. It is what it is.
No point to play.
Connor Bazelak has been putting up numbers. Of course, their record doesn't reflect a lot, but they're better than the actual team. The record suggests. Georgia's still playing hobbled. A lot of guys out for this game. I'm going to say the over for sure because I think it's going to take
I'm not
a
saying
lot
Georgia's
to stop
going to have
Georgia.
an offensive explosion this
well,
week.
Maybe because Missouri's defense is bad,
Missouri's
but they're going to have
really
to keep
bad.
up with Missouri. I still don't think Missouri can beat Georgia.
No. They'll cover that 14-point spread, though.
I think I'll say it'll be like a 6 to 7
I think a realistic score prediction, if we're just going to go that far, would be like 31-24 type game.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. I don't think I think maybe mentally, too, they might be checked out now because they're out of contention. And it's just weird to see that, but it is what it is. We'll talk about another team, the best team in the state right now of South Carolina, the Coastal Carolina Chanticleers at number 15 in the 7-0 ranking will be traveling to Troy, Alabama to take on the Trojans. The over-under of this game is 54. Coastal Carolina is favored by 11, and give me all of that.
Yeah, I think
give me the over and give me all of Coastal Carolina in this one.
I'm buying into the Chanticleers.
I'm buying into it.
We've been talking about them since like week 2.
Dude, Grayson McCall.
He's really good.
This team is like on a mission right now, and I joked about this earlier in the year. I was like, instead of playing Citadel, we should play Coastal. And now I'm kind of like, ooh.
Yeah.
But I think that I truly do think that Coastal Carolina. Hats off, helmet tap, Coach Jimmy Chadwell.
Rocking down there with the teal.
These guys are killing it, man. I'll have to say, I think the run game is probably better for Troy, but I'm going to go with Coastal Carolina in this one. I just think they're on a mission right now. They want to win that Sun Belt. And who would have called Coastal Carolina winning it over Appalachian State right now?
Nobody.
Or Louisiana? So we'll go with that one too. Another game that's kind of interesting, and it's another G5 game that a lot of people don't want to talk about, but it is what it is. Marshall, at number 16 in the country, 6-0. Look, they can throw the ball. This might actually be one of the better throwing teams in the country. Also, like their coach, Doc Holliday. What a name. They're going to be playing at home against Middle Tennessee. Rick Stockstill.
It's going to be a blowout.
It's going to be a blowout. Now, you remember Stockstill was a coordinator at Clemson back in the day. Marshall's favorite at 23.5. And the over-under is 57. Take all of that. Right now, I'd be surprised if Coach Stockstill is still the coach next year at Middle Tennessee. I got Marshall all over this one. Not even close.
Yep.
I would do the Liberty Coastal Carolina game, but that game might actually have potential to be Georgia Tech Cumberland, so we won't do that one. There's a chance that Liberty could beat them by 200 points. And how about Malik Willis for Liberty playing with Hugh Freeze? Of course, he was the Auburn quarterback that transferred out because he got beat by Bo Nix. And I wonder if Auburn fans are kind of like, dang, we should have kept this guy. I don't know. He didn't win the job, so it is what it is. But big game on the docket. This is something we're all going to have our eyes on this weekend. Notre Dame is traveling to Chestnut Hill to play the Boston College Eagles. Of course, Notre Dame did come off of a big win over Clemson. They are 7-0 in the season, and number 2 ranking in both the AP and the coaches poll. Now, over-under is 49.5. Notre Dame is favored by 13.5. I don't want to say yes to that at all. I want to say, I'm not saying they're going to be a victim of circumstances.
Well, Notre Dame win seems like the most likely scenario.
Yeah, I want to say this game, and a lot of people might be saying, oh, you guys got beat, you're just mad. Now, Notre Dame's kind of volatile. I know they've been on a upward trend, but after being that emotionally excited about beating the number 1 team in the country, then you travel to Boston College, a team that's going to play hard-nosed football. There's a chance that Boston College could actually sneak up on them. Now, Phil Dracovic, former Notre Dame quarterback, is going to have the insight on what Notre Dame likes to do. Of course, he was under Chip Lindsey and Tommy Rees last year, so he knows what the offense is going to do. You know he's going to give him a little bit of a insight of what Notre Dame likes to do. And plus, the film on Notre Dame from this past game is going to help Jeff Hafley, former defensive coordinator at Ohio State. I do like that over-under. I want to take the over if it's 49.5. I don't like 13.5. I'm going to go...
I say Notre Dame wins at like maybe 31-21.
Yeah, I'll say 10 points. And if you think we're crazy, 12-7 Louisville. Again, I do think that Kyron Williams is going to go off again, but we'll see what happens. And we're obviously strangely rooting for Notre Dame to win this game. Another game, 3:30 docket. Ohio State will be traveling to College Park to take on them Terps. Of course, I am from Maryland, so I have a little small soft spot for Maryland Terrapins, but look, Maryland has been playing some pretty good football right now, and the things that they do schematically, Talia Tungavailoa with Rakeem Jarrett is a revelation. These guys have been killing it, getting separation from anybody that they played so far. However, they are playing Ohio State. The over-under in this game is 73 points. Ohio State's favored by 25.5, and I think that's not going to happen, but I do think that they're going to win by 3 scores. I can see 17 points, 20.
Hey, Maryland's fun.
Maryland's going to put up some. They're going to put points on Ohio State.
I kind of came on the show and kind of was rough on him after week 1.
Well, it was a bad game.
He played terrible, but they bounced back since then. They got a win over Penn State. They got a win over Minnesota. Like,
and that's again the revelation of having.
If they didn't drop that game, this would be like Maryland would be like number 19.
They would, yeah, they'd be ranked by this. But I think that having such a good connection between Talia and Rakeem has helped out the running game at Maryland, and the scheme that Mike Loxley likes to do. Split flow zone type stuff, a lot of cross-face passing, naked boots from quarterbacks, getting them out of the pocket, just like he did for his little brother when he was at Alabama. For his big brother in Tua. They're going to get some open, and that opens up the running game for Mr. Funk, Jake Funk. Still not going to be enough to beat Ohio State, though. I think Ohio State wins this game, but not by 25.5. I'm not taking that over. I'm not taking that line, but I am taking the over-under. I'm taking that over. I think both teams have a chance to score over 30 points. Way over 30 points. I think I could see Ohio State scoring 52. I think I could see 52-31.
I don't have a ton of insight to provide, but I think Ohio State's going to win.
Of course.
It's going to be marginal enough to where it'll be considered like a technical blowout, but I think the game will be closer than the score indicates.
Oh, yeah.
That's really all I have to say about that.
Let's talk about just a few more, though, and we'll get you guys out of here. Thank you for joining us tonight. We appreciate you guys sticking with us, talking college football. Of course, we'll be here every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Catch us online. We'll be live, and you can always watch the clips later on in the week. Also thinking about doing some episodes, some Q&A stuff. Just come on here and chat with us and shoot the breeze with us. We're going to have some fun. All right, we got another 7 o'clock game. We have the Arkansas Razorbacks traveling down to the Swamp to take on the Florida Gators. Really elated by pretty much locking up the SEC East. The over-under for this game is 63, and the line is Florida favorite at 17.5. Nope.
I'm taking the Gators.
I'm taking the Arkansas Razorbacks to
upset or cover.
To cover.
Okay, they'll cover.
No, they're not beating Florida.
They'll cover. Yeah.
Yeah, and the reason why I don't have Arkansas beating Florida is not because I think Arkansas is a bad team. In fact, I think they're probably the most resurgent team outside of Texas A&M in college football. I think that Coach Sam Pittman has COVID. He's not going to be on the sideline, so we'll see what happens with that. I'm sure Kendall Briles will probably take over that, or Barry Odom since he was a head coach. But Florida's going to score. They're like Alabama. They're going to score 40, 50 on everybody, too.
Their defense is terrible, though.
Their defense is really bad, tragically bad. In fact, the first play of the game, I was kind of a little scared about Georgia beating.
We came into the season thinking their defense was going to be good.
Well, we were tragically wrong. But in this game, I still think that Arkansas is a good enough team to keep it competitive. I don't think they win this game.
Give me Florida like 42-24.
Yeah, give me this. Give me the under. I don't see the 63. I don't see it. I don't see Arkansas. Well, maybe. We'll go with that. Yeah, I'll take the over. I will not take the line. I think that Arkansas covers in this game. Kyle Trask playing great, but so is Felipe Franks, and he wants.
Weirdest thing for me, I was tripping out last week. Like, turned on my television, right? I'm just watching some Pac-12 football, and Washington State quarterback turned around and he handed the ball off.
Yeah.
Like,
What in the world is this?
okay.
Of course, they still run air raid, but it's a different kind. Of course.
And then he turned around and he handed it off again.
And it's like, what?
I'm like, what is
Wow,
happening
they're-
right
they're
here? And the
not
running back
normal.
was good.
Hey,
The
check
running
this
back
out.
was really good.
No, check this out. Quarterback Jaden DeLaura, all right? Only 33 attempts passing. That's like a first quarter for Mike Leach. But I think Tyler Shuff is a revelation. I think a lot of people were trying to figure out what was going to happen when Justin left the Ducks. Of course, he's lighting it up in the NFL now. Justin Herbert was a transcendent quarterback. But Tyler Shuff is the real deal. I think they still have some really good running backs. C.J. Verdell, Habibi Likio.
I'm just going to say that Oregon run defense last week was not looking great.
No, it wasn't. But Oregon's run defense usually hasn't been very good.
If Deion McIntosh for Washington State can get rolling,
Nah, I don't see it.
It could get. I'm not saying
don't
Washington
see it.
State has a chance to win. I think that 10 line is because Vegas saw what we saw last week.
That's right.
Oregon is not a great team.
No, but Oregon has the potential to score a lot of points.
They do.
So I think right now, if this over-under is 57.5, I'm taking the over. And I'm also taking, me personally, I'm taking the line on this one. I think Oregon can definitely win by 10 points. Plus, again, I have a soft spot for Oregon. I do root for the Ducks. So there's a little bit of bias in there. But apparently, I have a lot of bias for Texas A&M, too. So I'll go ahead and toot that. I'm a Texas A&M homer. I love Texas
Ellis
A&M.
has a Texas A&M flag on his car that he flies around.
You're dang
I can
right.
vouch for that.
You're dang right. Another game that we want to look at, and this game is going to probably be the interesting one of the night. Wisconsin's finally going to be playing football again. Right now, they're going to be traveling to Ann Arbor to take on the Michigan Wolverines, a team that just looks terrible right now. We were so wrong about that video, too. Joe Milton's going to save Jim Harbaugh.
No.
I had the whole thumbnail up there like an idiot.
I think Michigan's going to win.
I know that Michigan's going to win. And there's a reason for this. First and foremost, Wisconsin's probably still going to be without some players. And they haven't played football in a couple weeks, whereas Michigan, even though they've been getting pounded, have still played football. They're going to be more football shaped than Wisconsin. I think Graham Mertz is still going to be the starter. Hopefully everything's good. If he's not, then if it's Wolf, they're not winning. If it's I don't even know Vanderbook, whatever. If it's them, they're not winning. But I think Michigan right now, the over/under is 54.5 with Wisconsin favored at 4 points.
Maybe the under in Michigan seems like.
I'm taking the under. I think this is going to be a slow, trudging game.
I
think neither team scores more than 24 points. And I think that Michigan is going to pull out this win, not because they're a better team than Wisconsin, but because they've been playing football consecutive
Let's talk about the actual biggest game in the Big Ten.
Get out of here, man.
The Boilermakers traveled. Actually, Northwestern comes across Indiana to West Lafayette to play Purdue. This is a ranked matchup.
You know what the weirdest thing is?
Northwestern
right now?
is ranked.
The best team in Indiana right now is Indiana.
Yeah,
which is weird.
And
no, I'm wrong. False.
Yeah,
Notre Dame.
Notre Dame
is in South Bend.
Let's just talk
Danny Vandenboom. Thank you, Christopher O'Connor. You are the Danny Vandenboom.
Let's talk about how Indiana has 4 undefeated teams.
Yeah, that's actually scary.
They have Notre Dame, they have Indiana, Purdue, and Northwestern are all undefeated.
So do they own college football right now?
Because the state of Indiana owns college football right now.
Wow, them boys have been that's weird.
Yeah.
Obviously, Northwestern's coming down.
They're only 3-point favorite.
Hey,
I've been saying it all year. Don't sleep on the Boilermakers. Nope. Give me Purdue.
Look, I'm going to go ahead and take this moment to say something, too. So I have been obsessed. This is completely non-football related, but I have been obsessed with a case that I want everybody out there, if you're listening and you come across this, please let us know. Go out there and put a tip in. So in 2017, February 13th, 2 13-year-old girls, Abigail Williams and Liberty German, were killed on the Monon High Bridge by a man who is known as Bridge Guy. They have audio and video of the guy, but we still have not figured out who the killer was. Now, this is a town of 3,000 people plus, so it's rural. You would think that they would know who it is. To this day, they still have not figured out who it is. The reward for this is $250,000. Pat McAfee actually put in like $75,000 to it to be able to find this person that killed these 2 young girls. So if you are anything Indiana fan and you know anything about this, please put it out there. And I'm sorry for this PSA, but I am obsessed with this case, so I want to know about it. But when you get home, look it up. But over-unders 50.5. Northwestern favored by 3.
You're going to take Northwestern.
No.
You're taking Purdue.
Taking Purdue, man. They're playing at home. Aiden's playing some good ball right now. Look, I trust Peyton Ramsey, a quarterback from Northwestern. And I like the coach, Pat Fitzgerald. But I think right now, if you look at anybody else, you want to know about a team, if they have an X factor, can they win? Name an X factor outside of Peyton Ramsey on Northwestern's team. I don't see it. Right now, with just Rondale Moore alone, not even talk about Bell, not even talk about Horvath.
Yeah.
I think this team's going to get a win.
I think they'll win.
I think they're going to get a win. I think the line being 3 points tells you something about what Vegas thinks about this game.
And listen, you have to think, like, maybe Purdue would have got Wisconsin last week.
Maybe. But, well, yeah, especially if they were starting Danny Vandenboom.
Purdue, let's not slight. Purdue got top 25 votes this week.
Mm-hmm.
They did, and they're ranked like the top 25. They don't just do the top 25; they rank them down to like 35. Purdue was like the consensus 28.
Yeah, so
this is a good team.
Again, do I think either one of these teams have contention for the playoffs or anything like it? No, they can't even sniff it. But I like this matchup. I'm going to watch this game, and I think Purdue's going to pull it out. Let's go ahead and just hypothetically do the score predictions for the Alabama LSU and Texas A&M Tennessee game. Alabama LSU
would have been a blowout.
Would have been Alabama 77, LSU 10. And I'm not just ragging on them, but from what happened last year, the way these teams are set up this year, and the way that LSU just seems to be checked out, Alabama would have put up 77 points on them. Without a doubt. It'd have been easy. And then they just move along to their number one ranking for the end of the year. And then Texas A&M going against Tennessee. I think Tennessee has also checked out a little bit. I don't know what happened to them. They started so strong. Everybody thought they were going to be a competitive team against Tennessee, but against Georgia, but it didn't work out. You lost to Stetson Bennett, who's not even – Dwan Mathis is the quarterback again. It's scary. I don't know what's happening to Georgia. But I would say Texas A&M would have won this game by like 30 points. I just don't think that Tennessee's defense right now – I think they have checked out. To'o is a great linebacker, and I think you put him anywhere in the country, he's going to be great. But I think Tennessee has checked out mentally and physically. And I think Texas A&M, where they might not be the most talented team in the country, I think that a lot of things are breaking for them, and they have confidence. I think they would have probably beat the crap out of them. And then Auburn, Mississippi State. That's just hypothetical. How many yards does the Mississippi State quarterback have?
Against Auburn?
Mm-hmm.
Lots?
Yeah.
Well, Costello's pretty bad.
Yeah.
Lots?
Well, yeah.
400?
I think that game would have been boring as crap. I wouldn't have watched it.
Really?
I know you said you would want to because you like Leeds, but
I'm
not watching that game. That game's terrible. But folks, I appreciate you guys. Thank you for joining us tonight. Of course, we'll be back here next Tuesday night, 7 p.m. Get ready for it. We're going to be doing a lot of recaps from college football. Of course, Clemson's got the off date. Everybody else is playing. We'll get into it. Thank you so much for watching. And as always, it's great to be a Clemson Tiger, even with a loss. I'll catch you guys next weekend, Tuesday night, 7 p.m. Don't forget,